listening to The Wave Northwest, bringing you the absolute finest in arts and entertainment from the great Northwest and beyond. And now, on with the show, with your hosts, Tony DeLisio and one-hit wonder Wade. This is The Wave Northwest on Digital Revolution Radio.
All right, here you got a story about a brain.
Well, I do actually. It's rather disturbing actually. So let me bring this up. So there was a man, I believe it was in Florida. Oh wait, let me see here. No, Pennsylvania.
Interesting.
Strangely enough, who was arrested and charged on Thursday after his aunt found a human brain inside a Walmart shopping bag beneath the front porch.
And why in the world did he have this brain there, Wade?
Well, I don't think it was for smarts. I think what they finally figured out was that he was using that brain to get high. Like, you know, everybody finds all these new ways to get high, and this is a new one to me and extremely disturbing. It was a preserved brain from a laboratory, which was soaked in formaldehyde. And I don't know if you've heard anything about Sherm, but Sherm is a marijuana cigarette dipped in formaldehyde, which makes you hallucinate or whatnot. But he just fast-tracked the whole formaldehyde thing and went right to the brain.
Yeah, that's disturbing to say the frickin' least.
Yeah. You know, why that thing wasn't rotting and just why it didn't make him sick, I don't know. But the formaldehyde apparently was getting him very high. And I mean, that could only happen somewhere over on the East Coast.
Wow, man. Well, tell you what, I like to smoke weed and I like to get high, but if you ever hear about me doing anything remotely like that, go ahead and just shoot me. We don't even need to have a discussion about it. Just shoot me in the face. I don't need to be around anymore. If I have that prolific of a lack of judgment, I don't even know. What the hell is wrong with people? I mean, there's perfectly good things that grow in the ground. Mushrooms, marijuana. You know, you don't really need to go out and do this bath salts crap and all this other wet smoking pills. I mean, people are going to do what they do. Don't get me wrong. No judgment here. But for me, I prefer the organic method.
Well, you know, I've never had the desire to eat somebody's face.
No.
You know.
No.
So,
ours have any smokables that has anything to do with anybody's brain. I mean, I'm doing stuff to my own brain, and that's cool. But I don't really feel the need to. Yeah. Wow. That's just plain weird. Well, I have a rather shocking and disturbing story for you this week myself, my friend.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, as everybody knows, you can't get away from it. The Pokemon Go stuff is a frickin' national sensation or international sensation, even though people are getting arrested for being on private property. People have literally walked off a cliff doing it. There's all kinds of stuff. But, you know, people are having their fair share of fun. But, you know, Wade and I here at The Wave, we, of course, like to let you guys know about things that may put you or your family in danger or jeopardy of some sort. So it's only fair to let you guys know that Pokemon Go has some direct links or direct-ish links to the CIA. Pokemon Go was created by a company called Niantic, which was formed by a guy named John Hankey. Hankey also happened to found a company called Keyhole. What does Keyhole do, you ask? Well, if you go to Keyhole's website, you can't. It just takes you straight to Google Earth because Keyhole was acquired by Google back in 2004.
Wow, that's so shocking.
Right? Check this out.
Yeah.
Before that, Keyhole received funding from a firm called InQtel, a government-controlled venture capital firm that invests in companies that will help beef up Big Brother's tool belt. What's more, the funds InQtel gave Keyhole mostly came from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, whose primary mission is collecting, analyzing, and distributing geospatial intelligence. Now, some of you guys out there might be going, oh, these guys are crazy. That's just a bunch of stupid, crazy, frickin' conspiracy theory bullshit. But check this out. for any of you that got the app or can take a look at the app's privacy policy, here's a saucy little bit. This is a direct quote from the privacy policy. We cooperate with government and law enforcement officials or private parties to enforce and comply with the law. We may disclose any information about you or your authorized child that is in our possession or control to government or law enforcement officials or private parties as we, in our sole discretion, believe necessary or appropriate. All right? So, when when you sign up to Pokemon Go, you're not only giving it access to your location and your camera, which is sketchy to begin with, but you also give it full access to your Google account. So, which means if you have an Android phone, your Google account is pretty much, they have access to every single thing you do. And if you're cool with that, I mean, we all know it's ever since, Snowden came out and told us the NSA has been spying on us, and we've all suspected it anyway. Personally, my outlook on that is like, spy away. Anybody spying on me is going to be incredibly bored unless they like, video games, guitar playing, and me oogling at my wife's boobs. That's probably going to be the highlight, really. But in any event, some of you people out there might be concerned about your privacy, and especially your children's privacy. So, before you go, make sure you read that frickin' that protection or that privacy policy, and it's a privacy policy everything. Okay.
Well, so I think along with that, most apps actually have the same types of privacy policies where, I mean, they just get access to pretty much everything you own.
Right.
Online.
The sketchy thing to this though is that people's children are using it, and people's children are running around, and
Absolutely.
I mean, Ginger brought up
take this for instance. So if you publish your address or whatever, and then you're out chasing Pokemons and you're down on, let's say, a mile away from your house, well, then who doesn't know you're not at home? So they can actually know when you're not home by just chasing this app or following this app and all the information that's provided by this app.
Well, sure. Here's another one. What if some weird child molester dude or chick or whatever finds out that there's some, because I like one of my sons who's like 24 is playing it. So, he's a grown man. He can do whatever the hell he wants, right? But he did tell me there's like 151 Pokemons or something. He's already collected like 79, but there's certain ones that are really rare that everybody's foaming at the mouth to get. So how hard is it for some pervert dude to find out about where the super rare Pokemon is and just go camp and wait for the kids to show up? I mean, it's like a frickin' buffet lunch, not cool. So anyways, if your kids are Pokemoning on the go, I know it's awesome that they're maybe getting out of the house and they're exercising, and that's a wonderful thing, but, maybe keep an eye on them because all this stuff's a little bit sketchy. Also, Wade, I don't know if you knew this, but since just in the short time Pokemon Go came out, Nintendo's stock has literally doubled to the tune of like $5 billion or something. Just because.
Yep.
Yeah. So, obviously, incredibly popular, successful app, and lots of people are loving it and having fun. But in the spirit of, keeping everybody informed about what's going on out there, when I found out about all that stuff, I thought that I'd pass that along to you good people, and you can use your own judgment on how you want to proceed from there. And on that note, that's the last you'll hear about Pokemon Go from the Wave Northwest, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've covered that ground. All right, so also, the FBI recently announced that they are no longer in pursuit of D.B. Cooper, and basically, if he's still alive, he totally got away with that stuff. In case people don't know, D.B. Cooper.
Closed.
Dude jumped out of a plane with like $200,000, wearing nothing but a suit, somewhere over Oregon, and just completely disappeared. Nobody found him. A lot of people think he never would have survived in that weather. But
now
if
that
he
you
did,
mentioned that, isn't it crazy that they just now finally closed that case, but yet JFK was closed years ago, like decades ago?
Right,
I mean, we're talking about $250,000, big whoop.
Right.
So we're talking about a president who was assassinated at Daley Plaza, and that case was closed decades ago.
Yeah, well, shoot, that's a rabbit hole that we don't even have time to get into. But there's all kinds
Right.
of questionable stuff about that.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Anyways, we're very excited about the show tonight. We've got some awesome, awesome guests. Coming up in about 10 minutes, we've got our awesome friend Mason Randles, frontman of the Sunshine Wall. He sings, he plays
Yeah.
guitar, sometimes he plays drums. He's a multi-talented, fun-loving, all-around cool dude. And so we'll be bringing him in just about 10 minutes. And then at 8 p.m., we will have a full hour with a hero of Wade and I's. We both are big fans of Coast to Coast and Art Bell, and in fact, this show got started initially because Wade and I used to have these great late night conversations about UFOs and government conspiracies, and of course music and all sorts of different stuff. And we were like, man, we should just get a radio show going, and then we could just bullshit about this stuff. And if people don't like it, they could turn it off. But I bet somebody would find some of this stuff interesting, because we're always looking in different little rabbit holes and all that good stuff.
I sure know that I found it interesting for the last 20 years. So,
yeah. So we have Peter Davenport, the director of the UFO reporting, the National UFO Reporting Center. I would say that between Peter and MUFON, all of the UFO reports, for the most part, that civilians are making at least, go to one of those two organizations, and I'm pretty sure the lion's share actually goes to Peter's organization, the National UFO Reporting Center. So we're going to be talking about some really cool sightings of the past, some really cool things that are happening recently, Peter's history and how he got involved in the field in the first place, all kinds of fun stuff. It's going to be awesome. It's totally basically like I get to, interview one of my personal superheroes, and I know, Wade, you feel the same way, right?
it's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, literally. Go
I've
ahead.
been talking to Peter during the week, and he's so humble. And, there's a lot of UFO researchers out there, but Peter is one of those ones that, he doesn't really put a label on anything. He just pretty much just dictates the facts.
He's reporting. He's reporting what is reported to him without any bias,
Right.
which is great. I mean, everybody. Some people are fascinated by the subject, like both of us. Some people think it's just the most ridiculous shit in the world. Some people are on the fence. Some people are like mildly interesting. Wherever you sit with the whole thing, that's what's going to be going on for the second hour of the show. We'll probably squeeze a little bit of music in there, but if you're only here for the music talk, well, tonight after 8 p.m., it's going to be all about UFOs. I know some of you guys are thrilled. I know some of you guys are turned off. Either way, that's kind of what's going down.
Well, I'm thrilled.
I'm thrilled too. I'm diggity dog dang thrilled. This is one of my this is a historical moment for the Wave Northwest as far as I'm concerned, brother.
It surely is. Yeah. I've been listening to Peter for probably 20 years now, not just on Coast to Coast, but I've also watched a lot of his documentaries online, on YouTube, and just such a detrimental person for documenting UFOs and not being...
You don't
Hello?
mean detrimental, do you? Are you there?
Hello? Yeah.
Wait.
Well,
Yeah,
detrimental as far as like doesn't have really like an edge on either side of the issue. Like he just documents.
I think you mean unbiased. Detrimental means like something that's against something. Like eating concrete is detrimental to your health.
Well, yeah, that would be detrimental.
Yeah.
But,
so there's a special English lesson just for you, brother. Right here.
Well,
you heard it,
you.
folks. You heard it. You
On
heard
the
it.
way.
We do vocabulary words and everything. All righty. Well, we're getting ready to pull in our next guest, and as I said, Mason Randles. He sings and plays guitar for the Sunshine Wall. The guy's a huge supporter of the music scene. I've seen Mason be driving from he lives way over in Kitsap County. He'll come over and catch a show in Tacoma, a show in Seattle, and a show all the way up in Everett. The dude puts some miles on his car, spends hours of his time supporting the scene, and he doesn't just do that because he's a crappy musician. He's a brilliant musician. He's just He's a big part of the community and a wonderful dude, and we're excited to have him on.
And
And
a great supporter, too.
yes, very much so. Awesome dude all the way around. And so we're going to play a little bit of the Sunshine Wall for you from their brand new album that was just released last Saturday night. And this song is called Elephant. Check it out.
Tall,
And we're back. That killer track right there was The Sunshine Wall, featuring our next guest, Mr. Mason Randles. He was singing and playing guitar. Mason, welcome to the show, my brother. Hello.
Hello, Mason.
Glad to have you here, sir. How is your day going?
Oh boy, I had a very busy day. I'm not going to bore you with everything I did, but it was a lot.
Yeah? Right on.
Oh yeah.
One of these
How about
days,
you?
well, I had a very cool day. I won't bore you with the details either, but it was wonderful. Yeah, we all got a little bit of sunshine. That's always nice. Especially with the Sunshine Wall, we got a whole theme rocking now. Woo!
Oh yeah.
What a coincidence.
So that last track, Elephant, that's off your brand new album you've just released called 3. And
Yes,
I love every track I've heard. That track in particular is really one of my favorites. And could you tell us a little bit about what the inspiration for that song was, and give us the inside scoop?
All right. So a lot of my lyrics, when I go to write a song, they're all really vague, really on purpose, just because either I don't have something specific to say, or maybe I'm not trying to piss off whoever the song is about. Elephant was different because that is about a very specific thing. It is about a character from a show called Adventure Time, the ancient psychic tandem war elephant. It's
Nice.
yeah, dude. Over the span of like a bunch of seasons, he's only appeared like 5 times, but they just give him this fascinating story. He gets brought back to life. He finds this witch who ended up going into a coma, and he can actually communicate with her, and is the only one who can do so. That line, "The witch from the sky." It's one of my favorites. It is incredibly hard to transition from that verse to the chorus vocally for me, especially live. We finally got to do that, and it was a lot of fun. But man, I got to practice.
Cool. Very cool. Well, that's one great thing about you guys is your studio tracks sound awesome, but you guys replicate it very well live, and I'm sure Wade agrees. That's something that we have much respect for as in musicians. A lot of times that's frankly not the case. The album sounds great, and you go see a band live, and it's like, what happened? What's going on? And then there's no auto-tune, and then what's your opinion on auto-tune, by the way, Mason? How do you feel about auto-tune?
I think if you're using it to try and hide faulty singing, I have no respect for that. But on the other hand, if it's being used in an artistic sort of way, I don't hate it.
Uh-huh.
So
Right.
like, if they're trying to get a certain sound, for instance, a very, very famous sort of auto-tune thing is in the game Portal and Portal 2. I'm sure you've played at least one of those. You're
Sure.
a gamer. GLaDOS's voice the whole time was pretty much all auto-tune, or made to sound like it at least, and I thought that was a really cool, make her sound like this evil robot.
Right. Yeah, it is kind of the modern replacement of the vocoder when it's used. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely been used in a lot of ways to cover things up, and I won't mention any artist names, as tempting as it is. But some people just really should not be singing if they have to rely on a machine to do it for them. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to just practice more, right?
Oh, for sure.
Well, enough. Obviously, I've heard Mason and his band live, and I mean, definitely, you don't need auto tune. I mean, you got great pipes. The guitar playing is legit. The whole band is legit, and I can't wait to see you guys again. Now that you
Awesome, dude. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, always a great time seeing you guys, and it's been kind of neat. I think I've been aware of the Sunshine Wall for a year and a half, maybe 2 years now, and I've watched a steady state of evolution, and you guys are growing and continuing to come up with more and more cool stuff, and that's a beautiful thing, bro. So big props to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we had you're the first legacy guest we've ever had on, because your dad, Derek Randles, was one of our first guests, actually, who's unbeknownst to Wade and I, after knowing you for a year or so, found out that your dad is a world-renowned Bigfoot researcher and expert, and that's really cool. And so I imagine Bigfoot's probably played a pretty significant role in your life.
Yeah, he's been doing that. I think he started when I was like 1 or 2, before I could even remember things or think. So, to me, it's almost sort of a normal thing to kind of talk about and think about. A lot of people are like, oh, Bigfoot, don't be seen talking, in a public place about Bigfoot. You can get made fun of. Like, yeah, it's normal. Whatever. My dad totally hunts him. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, I think it's
God,
pretty cool, and he has a pretty level-headed and I mean, he from talking to him, he's definitely not the pie in the sky guy going there's a Bigfoot hiding behind every tree in the forest, and
Oh yeah.
it seemed like he had a
very
very grounded.
Yeah, level approach for sure.
I've had to camp with the opposite, and honestly, it is hilarious. Oh, what was that noise? It was a big feet. Oh, let's go get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh boy, yeah. So I appreciate my dad being as level-headed as he is.
So
Yeah,
that being said, so have you ever had any kind of a Bigfoot experience or no yourself?
I think when I was 10, we kind of wandered into the woods behind our house because he was hearing stuff. I'm not gonna say whether I thought that was an experience or not. I'd say 99% of the time I'm in the woods, it's because I'm on a motorcycle. A little bit today, just something else I did today. But yeah, so I'm usually making too much noise or moving too quickly to really even look at my surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's the same with me. Like when I grow up, hunting and riding motorcycle in the woods, like really everything just goes by so fast. Like you would be really hard pressed to really notice anything other than what you're doing, like riding motorcycles or a beef, like landing in your mouth at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff goes by, you just don't see anything. You're just hauling ass.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we
Stay
sure did enjoy having your dad on the show. We've rebroadcasted a couple episodes from him, and I think it's definitely one of our more popular episodes, and it got a lot of feedback. And so, Derek, if you're out there listening, thank you again for being on. And right on. So back to the music. So, Mason, what's the Sunshine Wall got going on right now? What shows you got coming up? What you got cooking?
All right. Well, we were going to take August off. We were all really excited because, as I'm sure you very well aware, recording an album is stressful. It takes everything out of you. We were going to take August off. Then our mutual friend, Jason Moser, was like, yo, I need a band. And I'm like, man, I kind of wish we weren't taking the month off. And he's like, oh, you guys would be perfect. So I like, hey, bandmates, you want to do this? Kind of sheepishly asking because I don't like going back on my word. But they're all down. So August 6th, we're going to go play at the Rock Hard in Portland with Splintered Throne and Discordia.
Nice.
Very, very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Pretty excited about that.
Yeah, and
so how did the CD release show go? I mean, we've heard all about that.
Oh yeah, the CD release show was super weird, right? It seems like all the people I normally interact with, everyone, as I was talking to them in the months leading up to the show, like, we'll definitely be there. We're gonna do this. Wouldn't miss it for anything. Those are the people I was getting emails from all that day, like, hey, we're not gonna make it. So, like, very little of our normal crowd was at that show. However, there was still tons of people. For some reason, just it seemed like all of Bremerton wanted to go to the Manette that night, and I did spend some money on, promoting it in and out of Facebook. I put up a lot of flyers, just a lot of like traditional style promoting, and we ended up having a really successful night. So it was a stressful day that paid off in the end, I guess, is how I'll put that. Awesome.
Well, it's a shame that some of your True Blue fans, and I myself, unfortunately, was not there either. But getting your music exposed to an entirely new fan base and creating new fans sure isn't a bad thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's my favorite thing, is seeing faces I don't know. I mean, I do love the faces that I do know, like you guys and everybody that frequents places like Louis G's.
Uh-huh.
But, it was definitely it was one for the books, to put it in a term that we all overuse.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, congratulations on a successful release, and I have a feeling this album's going to serve you very well, my friend. It's very well recorded, and I'm not hearing a lot of filler on it. It's an album I could put on and leave on and enjoy the whole thing. And, sometimes that's not the case.
Oh, yeah.
Luckily, we know a lot of really talented people in cool bands, and they consistently put out killer shit. But, some of these big, huge bands even that put out, these $1 million videos and all that stuff, you get all excited and you watch a video and you're like, hell yeah, that's killer. You go get the record and it's like, wow, there's that and like one other song and the rest is just bleh,
Oh, yeah.
So big props to you guys.
Thank you.
Indeed.
If I may, I would like to do a bit of a shout out because I know he's listening. Our bass player, Thomas Norman, recorded and mixed the whole album.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, he actually owns a studio here, right here in Bremerton, called Combat Audio, and he also did work for a band called Long Shot Academy, who I'm sorry to say is not a band anymore, but just fantastic work across the board, and he really came through for us, and it got pretty stressful, and he powered through it probably better than I could have.
Well, the songs that I've heard are very well produced and very well mixed, so yeah, impressive.
Yeah, I'm sure he's just sitting there giggling at his laptop at home. So
well, he should.
That's awesome. Yes. Well, job well done there. Job well done. So you guys are playing at Rock Hard PDX. What was that date again?
That was August 6th. That's a Saturday. Let me check my calendar, make sure I'm not giving out the wrong day. I've done that. Yeah, August 6th.
Saturday, August 6th. So all you people in Portland and the surrounding areas, and even from here in Washington, if you're up for a road trip, that's going to be a killer show. Splintered Throne's a fantastic band, and Discordia is from the Bay Area, and they're a really, really awesome band as well.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hopefully we'll maybe be able to get some of the Discordians on the show and talk about their stuff before they come up here. They're going to be embarking on a whole national or at least West Coast tour here pretty quick, I think.
Nice. That word you just used kind of made me think of Martians, like Discordians, like from another planet or something.
Well,
I like it.
People from another planet. Yeah, we got that covered here at the next hour.
Would you consider that a detrimental term?
Oh, I don't know.
Ho, ho, ho. Ho, 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 Tony.
Are you Santa now?
I'm doing my best Ed McMahon impression.
Yes.
Yeah. Ho, 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 Tony.
That's man. All right. Well, how about we play another cool track of you guys? I've got a song queued up called Tomorrow. Does that one have any kind of story that goes with it, or is this some of your open to interpretation style lyrics?
The lyrics are that the music. This is an interesting song for us because one of the things I get ribbed for a bit from guys who understand music theory. I don't. I will publicly admit I know nothing of music theory. But they're like, yeah, everything's in the same key. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna mess this song up as much as possible and try to build around it. And like all of us are actually really happy at how it kind of turned out.
Very cool.
So it's different sound for us. I think you guys will dig it.
It's got a little bit of an experimental ambiance to it then.
Yeah.
That's very cool. All right, well, check it out, everybody. You're listening to The Wave Northwest. This song is called Tomorrow by the Sunshine Wall. And we're back. You're listening to the Wave Northwest on Digital Revolution Radio. That song was called Tomorrow by the Sunshine Wall. Another great, great song, Mason. That's awesome, man. I'm so happy for you guys. The sky's the limit for you guys right now.
Well, thank you.
So while we were off the air, you mentioned that you actually were intrigued by one of our guests last week, William Thomas Anderson, and wanted to tell us a little bit about your experience. You actually reached out to him after hearing the show. That's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of at a point where like I have no experience as a band manager. It's my first time doing something like this. I've always been the drummer, just show up to the gig and play and be happy. So yeah, I mean, I reached out to this guy. Like, I have no idea what our next step is supposed to be. If you'd humor me, I'd love a little advice. And yeah, he ended up talking to me for like an hour, and just super nice dude. A lot of very helpful things he had to say to me. And just, William, if you're listening, like, dude, we're working on it, and thank you so much.
Yeah, William's a really bright guy, and he's got a lot of really neat things going on, and that's so awesome that you heard him on the Wave and liked what he had to say and decided to hit him up. Great dude.
Yeah, always swing the bat.
Heck yeah, he's a great dude for sure. Awesome. So you got the show coming up August 6th. And after that, are you going to resume your kind of chilling out for August motif? Or?
Yeah, we're going to be scaling back our shows a bit. I think one of our issues with draw, I mean, a lot of people like saying, like, yeah, you guys are excellent live, but our draw, I don't feel is where it should be. Mm-hmm. So a part of that is kind of overbooking. I think there was a month earlier this year where we played Bremerton 3 times. Like, of course, nobody's going to go to those. So we're changing up our strategy a bit. We're going to really, really focus on perfecting what material we have, coming up with new stuff. I'll tell you straight up, we're going with a different guitar tuning for our next album.
Oh, wow.
Just kind of change things up a bit and really onward and upward. Like, I'm very happy with 3. I'm very proud of 3. And sales have been really well, especially online so far. If you're listening and you've bought it, thank you. We appreciate you. I mean, we're just trying not to rest on our laurels too much and just really trying to take a different direction in what is the future for the Sunshine Wall. We're working on it.
And Tony, I think it's very detrimental. The
word of the day.
Yeah. I mean, if you play too many shows in any demographic, it's going to be detrimental to your turnout. I think that's just, yeah.
It is.
It's detrimental to the overall morale of the band, too.
Right?
Yeah,
well, playing dead shows doesn't really do anybody's spirit a whole lot of good. But, it's not even so much a matter of overplaying. I think it's a matter of strategic playing. Like you said, 3 shows in 1 month in the same city, probably not the best plan, unless you've just got some just diehard fans that are just going to eat that up every single day and they're super stoked. But in my experience, what happens if you play too much in the same area is people are like, oh, they're playing next Saturday here and they're over there, and then they're all, I'll get to one of those shows for sure. And then they don't end up going to any of them because they think they have too many options. But, we're lucky to live in such a wide spread out area to where you could play, one weekend in Everett, you could play the next weekend in Tacoma, the next weekend in Seattle, the next weekend in Bremerton, the next weekend in Portland, the next weekend in Olympia, and you could just about play every single weekend and be like doing, every other month in these cities and still be playing a lot and still be building a fan base in a lot of different areas. At least, I don't want to give away our secrets, but that's what Mechanism does.
Well,
or tries
to spread it out.
Tries to do anyway. We sometimes, and then there's different types of things. Like, for instance, an outdoor kind of festival thing is a little bit of a different deal than a venue show. And, because you got generally speaking, a much wider variety of people at an outdoor festival that may not even be into your type of music and never would have went to one of your club shows. But then they see you and they're like, hey, that's some toe tapping stuff. And then they show up, come in and check you out at your club shows. I think really that's a big key factor is converting new fans when you play, right? So if they never heard of you and they want to hear more after they leave, then you've done a good job. That's kind of how I look at it anyway.
For sure. I know you guys have been killing it with like the outdoor shows lately. I've noticed.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys are all. I mean,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I wasn't going to say anything.
No, I mean, like you guys are known for like insane draw, and everyone loves you, and that's something I've really noticed these last couple of years is you guys are like you got the ALS Fest coming up. You just played like Art on the Avenue. Like those are not traditional metal shows, and it seems like you guys are really doing well with that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it is kind of nice to get to get thrown into the mix as a metal band, where metal bands are usually frowned upon. You still ain't seeing us at Bumper Shoot or Bite of Seattle or any of that, but who knows? We'll just keep on trucking and see what shakes out. Definitely looking forward to working with you guys again. So hopefully here in the fall we will get another mutual show together with maybe all three of our bands. Wade's Inside the Gates has been writing some new originals and stuff, and Wade and his band have a show coming up next Saturday night at El Corazon with System 7 and the Mighty Invasive. That's going to be a barn burner. So that's very, very exciting. And,
so, hey, Wade, I have to rib you just a little bit here. We played together at the Paradise Bowl a while back.
We did.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Oh, it was. It was, for sure.
I think that's the first time I saw you guys, and I was just, like, blown away.
Yeah, and then Billy Bolt was there. We got to meet him. And one thing my guitarist noticed about your singers, like before every song, he would always introduce it as either this is a cover or this is an original, because you guys mix it up. So Jeremy was like, dude, before every song, this is an original.
That's somebody that we covered? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does that a lot. He's kind of a clown. He's a very good front man. He's a great singer. And he just tries to mix it up a little bit and just keep everybody.
Hey, Wade. I'm sorry to interrupt. Looks like Peter's calling in, and it's acting weird. It says answering this call is going to put the active call on hold. That's a totally new weird thing. So I'm going to answer it, and I may have to actually shoot. We lost him.
Oh, darn.
Let me see if I can add him to group call.
Okay.
Damn it.
That was a fun show, by the way.
Mason. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It was a pleasure.
Damn it.
That's too bad that kind of fell apart with that venue. That could have been a really cool place.
Man, tonight we've had some various things going on that are frankly detrimental to the show. Technical difficulties up the wazoo. That's really weird. Usually if somebody calls in on our call-in number, I'm able to add them into our call here. I'll tell you what, Mason, we're going to let you go, my friend. I'm going to play one last song of yours called Chili Filter. We're going to see if we can't get to the bottom of what's going on here. And thank you so much for being on, man. You're a wonderful dude, great musician, and we're all blessed to have you as a part of the scene up here in the Northwest.
Thank you very much. Brother. It was a pleasure to be on.
All right, we'll be talking to you soon. Everybody out there, check it out. Bitchin' song for... Ooh, what the heck is that? Damn, I got all kinds of crazy shit happening. This is a tune by the Sunshine Wall. It's called Chili Filter. Check it out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. You're listening to the Wave Northwest on Digital Revolution Radio. And we'd like to thank once again Mason Randles for gracing us with his time. We had a fun interview with Mason. And now we've got a guest that Wade and I are both very, very excited about. In fact, when we first started the show, we were brainstorming about some people that we would like, we're like, you know, kind of like bucket list items for the show of like guests that we would just be thrilled to have on. And it was a fairly short list, actually. And our next guest is actually one of those guys. And when Wade called me up, he said, Tone, guess what? And I said, what? And he goes, we're going to have Peter Davenport on the show. So, ladies and gentlemen of the Wave, please welcome Mr. Peter Davenport, the director of the National UFO Reporting Center. Peter, sir, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're just absolutely thrilled to have you here.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, too. What a great way to end a weekend, is being on a radio program over in Western Washington and elsewhere. So I am thrilled to be here, and my favorite subject is UFOs, and I'm pleased to be able to bring that subject to our audience tonight.
That's wonderful. So when I first started listening to you, I lived here in Western Washington for many years, but I was actually living in Dallas and listening to Coast. And at that point, I believe the UFO Reporting Center was based in or somewhere near Seattle, wasn't it?
That's correct. We were in the Arboretum for a while, just about probably a mile or mile and a half south of the Husky football stadium for a while. I ran it out of my house, out of my residence, and then I moved up to the University District, not far from where I had been. Then about 10 years ago, I purchased an ICBM missile site, an underground missile site, for turning it into a residence, and that's when I moved over to Western Washington, June of 2006. So I've been here ever since.
Eastern Washington.
Yeah. Did I say Western? Yeah, Eastern Washington.
Yeah.
I apologize. I mixed that up.
No worries. Wow. Well, that's got to be pretty amazing and quite an adventure moving into a missile site like that.
Well, I haven't moved into it yet. It's still pretty damp, pretty dark, pretty dusty, but I own it. People ask me, well, what are you going to do with that? And I say, well, if you're a stamp collector, what do you do with your stamps? You look at them, you dream about them, and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, gentlemen, but I've got it anyway.
Well, that's really neat.
Well, so you know that I'm from Spokane, which is not too far from Ritzville.
Oh, yeah.
Eastern Washington over there. And so do you actually have plans for that site over there?
Yeah,
or you just...
I have plans. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, gentlemen. I can't say anything definitive at this point, but my dream 10 years ago had been to own a missile site. One was available for about 24 hours, and I had to make the decision whether I wanted to be a talker and a dreamer or a doer. And I decided I was going to be a doer, so I bought it.
Okay, so now going from Seattle to Eastern Washington, there has to be a really big difference as far as what you're able to see at night. Have you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Have you noticed any difference?
Oh, we have beautiful, beautiful night skies over here, summer and winter. And I'm sort of up on a hill in my hometown here, and that makes a big difference. Even 100, 150 feet in elevation makes a big difference. And on a clear night, the sky, the nighttime sky over here is just beautiful. The Milky Way stands out like a fluorescent lamp, and it's just delightful. I've got 3 or 4 telescopes and a number of pair of binoculars, and I'm always outside looking at the night sky.
Well, I can attest to that. I mean, I'm being from Eastern Washington. I moved over there in the late '90s. Lived in Pullman. I'm sure you're
Oh
familiar
yeah,
with Pullman. Yeah,
sure.
and I mean the night skies are just incredible. And
Yeah,
but I mean, it doesn't really add or take away from the fact that things are visible at night, no matter
yeah,
where you are.
yeah. That's
And
right.
where I'm at right now, the home that I'm living in right now, a friend of mine used to live across the street from here back in the '90s, and we saw. I don't really know how to explain it. It was a daylight sighting, and shame on me for not reporting it. But
Yep.
and I should have called you, Peter. But it was a daylight sighting, and it was the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen
Yeah.
probably 3 different things that I couldn't explain, but this one in particular was just beyond incomprehensible.
Yeah.
It was broad daylight. It looked like an upside down conical shape. So the wider part was at the bottom, and it went to a point at the top, and it
Yep.
was metal in nature because it was broad daylight. It was morning. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and this thing was had no sound. It just coasted across the sky, and as it was turning, there was like glimmer from the sun, from the morning sun, and then the glimmer would go away as it spun. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was round. It was probably multi-sided
Okay.
in the sense that like sometimes it would shine and reflect the sun, and then other times it would be dark. And I asked my friend, I'll never forget this, because I think he still tries to deny the fact that we saw this together.
Yep.
But I had a witness, and he's like, I said, "What does that look like to you?" And he says, "Well, it looks like a human." And I don't even know what he meant by that, but it was unbelievable, and it was
Well,
silent.
fascinating story, and we would love to have that written down. Even though it's been a long while, a few years since you've seen it, you remember it very clearly. That I can tell by the way you're describing it, and you're passionate about it. Here's a factoid that will shock you, perhaps, and even our witnesses. It is my estimate, after 22 years of full-time UFO work, it is my estimate that out of 20,000 people like you who've had a dramatic sighting of something very, very unusual that could well have been a genuine UFO, out of 20,000 Americans, adult, competent, clear-thinking Americans, only one will have written it down. 1 out of 20,000 reports.
Wow.
Why do you think that
Isn't
is?
that odd?
Yeah, why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think people are just lazy. What they should know about us now, or about the fact that there are people who investigate the UFO phenomenon, and I don't know. It is a greater mystery to me why so many people do not report their UFO sightings than the UFOs themselves. I'm accustomed now. I'm comfortable with the fact that we are being visited routinely by UFOs. That's what the data say to me. But what I cannot understand is why so few people report them, and why so few people talk about them or accept the concept of the visitation of our planet. It is very bizarre. I think it may be the case that UFOs don't touch down very often because they know just how strange the human being is.
Well, do you think a lot of it is based on ridicule?
Well, it can't be, because when a person submits a report to the National UFO Reporting Center or to MUFON or UFOs Northwest, or there are a number of organizations like mine,
Move on.
virtually all of them guarantee anonymity. So if a person sees a UFO and submits a report to say my facility, there's no ridicule. Nobody will ever know who submitted the report except for me.
Well,
So it can't be ridicule.
Well, I think the way that ridicule possibly could play a role in that is that the ridicule and the ha ha factor, the way that the media has handled the subject for the last several decades. Because of that, a lot of people that have those experiences are hesitant to tell their close friends,
Well,
their family, almost anybody. But I do
that's
know
possible.
that most people that have a sighting like that, generally speaking, take an interest in the subject and more than likely would end up at some point hearing you and finding out that there is a good quality place where they're going to be taken seriously and not laughed at or put down or that their information's important and useful and that you'd actually want to hear it.
And I would hope they would provide contact information, but in the extreme, they can submit a report anonymously. Nobody will ever know who submitted it, but it's very inconvenient for investigators when people do that. But, you raise an interesting point, and my response is, have Americans become so frightened by every shadow in the forest that they're afraid to speak?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
it's bizarre. It is truly bizarre.
Well,
so I encourage people, irrespective of whether their sighting was 8 minutes ago or 8 decades ago, to write it down. Don't talk about it. Write it down and submit a detailed written report, most of all to preserve the data surrounding the report. And a lot of people say, well, what difference does it make 6 decades after the event? Could make a heaping big difference, particularly if they saw something that was seen somewhere else in the country at about the same time on the same date. So it's very, very important from my vantage point, very important for people who believe they've seen UFOs, no matter how long ago it was, to write it all down and submit a written report. And I encourage our listeners, and I would estimate that probably 20 or 30% of the adults listening to this program have had what they believe to be UFO sightings in their past. I would encourage them after this program to immediately sit down at a computer and write out a detailed report, submit it using our online report form on our website at ufocenter.com.
So all you listeners out there, if you've had an experience, even if you feel a little sheepish about it, or you aren't sure that you didn't actually see any aliens get out and walk across your lawn, but you saw something very anomalous in the sky or something inexplicable, please do report that, because it's important to get that data on file, and you can do that at ufocenter.com.
Thank you for that comment.
So, Peter, I know it's probably hard to say exactly, but do you have a ballpark figure of how many reports have come into the UFO Reporting Center since its inception?
Well, absolutely. And there's a difference between how many reports have come in and how many reports we have posted on our website, because a lot of the reports are prank reports, or we discover that they were not UFO sightings at all, and we remove those from the data stream. But we take over our telephone somewhere between 10 and 50 reports a day over the telephone.
Wow.
Only some of those get translated into written form. Most of them, and I'm shocked by how few people are willing to write a report after they've made a call to the UFO hotline, but so we take between 10 and 50 calls. Not all of those are UFO sighting reports, but we're posting probably about, I would say, roughly 20 to 25 written reports to our website on average every day.
Wow.
And
Shoot.
so-
take into account that we're capturing, if my estimate is correct, that only 1 out of 20,000 people who see UFOs reports them in written form, you begin to see what the volume of sightings may be around the world.
Yeah, that's just
And what I-
incredible.
And I've
Yeah.
noticed that also, Peter, that a lot of these calls that come in are probably mistaken identity, like normal terrestrial aircraft or whatnot, and
Absolutely.
that's going to happen. But there are some that, like I think I've had 3 in my life, but I looked at the skies my whole life, and I know what terrestrial aircraft is, and I know, what normal. Well, we're not going to get into contrails, but there's things that go on up there that just are not normal, and
Yeah, I
you
agree.
you can kind of tell the difference between those that are normal and not normal.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's particularly true if you've spent a few months, or in my case, 22 years on the hotline taking reports. You can almost tell from a person's voice, which of those reports are genuine. And then with just a few questions, you can usually establish whether the sighting might have been caused by the International Space Station or a launch of an ICBM missile out of either Vandenberg, or you may recall last November 7th there was a launch of an ICBM out of a submarine off the coast of San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
and we got many, many, many reports. And I'm so accustomed to taking reports of rocket launches that I can usually pretty quickly establish that it wasn't a UFO. So experience makes a big difference in this field, as is the case in any field, whether you're a race car driver or a professional boxer or an accountant or an attorney or a physician. Experience matters. You learn a lot in the course of your career, and you learn how to, in my case, how to weed out the pranks pretty quickly. We can do that with caller ID fairly effectively. If it's a kid calling in some monotonic voice, talking, using profanity, it's almost certainly a prank.
Sure.
But I sent you earlier, Wade, some links to reports. I don't know if you've had time to look at them, but one of them is from a retired U.S. astronaut down in Athens, Texas. On the 5th of July, 2013, just over 3 years ago, he had a very dramatic sighting of 6 red lights together with his wife and their adult daughter. And he said, I talked with him on several occasions. He said, during one of our conversations, he said, Peter, I don't know what those things were, but after having been an airline pilot, a fighter pilot, and an astronaut, 2 flights on the space shuttle, he said, I can guarantee you that they were not manufactured on this planet. That's a pretty good source of information.
Absolutely. And haven't there been many sightings from astronauts and STS,
Right.
astronauts or whatnot that have said that, like, what they really can't describe what they see as being terrestrial or normal in nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Edgar Mitchell.
Pardon?
Edgar Mitchell being one of those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of astronauts who claimed that they had seen things for which there was no explanation as far as they knew. Another report I sent you, another link, is to a sighting report from a retired Arizona Highway Patrol officer. And the people listening, our audience, can check out these dates and read the reports with their own eyes. It was the 28th of September, 2013. Retired Arizona Arizona Highway Patrol officer was standing in his home in Glendale, which is on the northwestern corner of Greater Phoenix. And he was looking to the north. He saw, to his great amazement, an orange light streak across the sky from west to east, from his left to right as he faced the north. He was just thunderstruck by it. he ran outside hoping to see the object, and in the subsequent couple of minutes, he saw 150, he estimates, more objects streaking to the northeast. That was, again, the 28th of September, 2013. People can read his report on our website.
It's just
So we're getting a lot of good reports.
It's just shocking that something that intense is just not front page news and on every news channel, and it's just, I mean, all it would take is one quantified, real big UFO sighting like that. It would be like the biggest story in history. It's just whether it's, I guess it's, I studied ufology history a little bit, and I know that in the 40s and the 50s. There wasn't any shame in talking about UFOs, and it was a widespread thing. And then they came out with Project Sign, and then Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book. And at the end of all that whole process, they basically announced that UFOs aren't a threat to national security, and basically there's nothing to it. And at that point, I think there was a lot more trust in our government than exists now. I think at this point. A lot of people are a little bit suspect of what the government has to say because they've been caught in a number of lies over the years, and anymore, I think if we had that proliferation of UFO sightings and everybody being on board with the whole thing and not feeling ashamed like they're going to lose their job or they're going to be a pariah in their family. That if the government came out and said that now, people would be like, oh, really? I'm going to pay twice as much attention, But somehow at that point, they set the stage for this, an ongoing policy of denial and ridicule. And it's just, it's really sad. And when you've got people who are astronauts, airline pilots, people that are entrusted with nuclear arsenals, are if they're so well trusted by the military and our government to literally take care of a nuclear arsenal, whatever those guys have got to say, I mean, why would they just randomly say, oh, there was a UFO coming over here and it was turning on and off our arming our missiles and disarming our missiles, and how is that not an issue of national security? It just blows my mind.
I just hosted a gentleman who used to be a launch control officer in the Atlas program and then in the Minuteman I program. And back in 1966, he was transferred from the Atlas sites to a Minuteman site out near Minot, North Dakota. And he arrived on a site the morning after a disc had flown over their command headquarters and had apparently taken 10 of his missiles in his flight of missiles offline. And Boeing investigated it. I think Boeing is the manufacturer of the Minuteman, and they never could determine, so far as this officer knows or ever knew, the engineers who were dispatched to Minot could never determine what the cause of that glitch was that took 10 missiles offline all at the same time. Very, very interesting story, and he's writing a book on the subject. It'll be out probably this year or next.
And hasn't that also happened in Russia and other countries as well?
Apparently, it's alleged that's the case, but I have no personal experience in researching that issue. All I can do is agree with your statement, Wade, and say I presume that's the case. There have been some documentaries, alleged documentaries, I have to say,
sure,
that have made that claim.
So now let's go back, like in the 90s. Okay, so first, I think I heard of you first back in the early 90s on Art Bell and all that stuff. And there were a lot of what they called UFO flaps, which means like huge,
increases in sightings,
yeah, like big time sightings, like Gulf Breeze or whatever. And then all of a sudden, it seems like those have diminished for some reason. And I don't know if it's just people are not reporting them, or if it's just the actual sightings have decreased.
Well, they do run in cycles. I agree with your assessment, Wade, and we don't know why. One of the things I would share with our audience is you have to be very careful to distinguish between the number of UFO reports and the number of UFO incidents, because one incident, for example, can generate hundreds of reports. The Phoenix Lights is a case in point.
Sure.
Probably the most dramatic UFO event in the history of modern ufology. Took place back March 13th of 1997. Most people know about it or have heard about it. And that was one incident. It lasted for just over 2 hours, and it generated, probably all told to all organizations, probably 1,500 to 2,000 reports. There's, regrettably, I'm sure there's still people in the Phoenix area who saw those craft, and it was a very dramatic sighting. The objects that hovered over Phoenix, for example, that night, that Thursday night, were up to 8 miles across. And I'm sure many of our audience will probably be convinced, predicated on my statement, that I'm a crackpot. But I am not. We have very accurate data on how high the object was. We have very highly accurate data on how large they appeared to be, for example, relative to a full moon. And one of the objects that hovered over Camelback Mountain, for example, over the home of Sue Watson, she just spoke down in McMinnville, Oregon at the McMinimans UFO Festival in May of this year. Did an excellent job of it. She estimated that the object that hovered over her and her 4 children subtended an arc of 135 degrees above their heads. In other words, hold out your arms and spread them 135 degrees apart, more than a third of a circle. That's how big the object was above their head. And at that time, it was, we believe, not less than 8,000 to 9,000 feet above ground level.
Wow.
That
Jeez.
translates to a size, a craft that was in the order of 8 miles, terrestrial statute miles from wingtip to wingtip.
And that wasn't just in Phoenix. Actually, that was reported for miles north and south of Phoenix.
Oh yeah,
as that whole night went on. I mean, it was documented and photographed for,
absolutely.
I think, 200 miles north or south of Phoenix.
Yep.
So
the first sighting that was submitted to the National UFO Reporting Center was from Henderson, Nevada, on the southeast corner of Las Vegas. And there were sightings from Kingman, from all over Arizona, and all the way down to Tucson. One object went down Interstate 10, headed southeast towards Tucson from Phoenix, and it was so big, people reported that it blotted out the night sky above their heads.
Man, can you imagine that, Wade? I mean, I have to say that if I saw that happening, I would think that there was a full-on Independence Day, end of the world, worldwide global invasion. Something, I mean, even something the size of a football field in the air would be frightening, but something a mile across, but 8 miles across, that's just pretty insane. And again, it did get a fair amount of press. But, you know, the government's explanation was that there was A-10s shooting off flares, right?
Right. Well, and you also have to consider the area that was in. It's not too far from Area 51, so everybody kind of like blew it off as, well, what could be, some sort of a, military aircraft or some, whatever. And it just, it's really easy for the government to just blow this stuff off.
Yeah. Well, actually, there was very, very little coverage. There was no coverage in the national press about this until the 18th of June. So it went uncovered in the national press from the 13th of March to the 18th of June. That's over 3 months they were able to quash this. And I have solid reason to believe that the Air Force intercepted that object over Sue Watson's home The pilot reported to his ground crew when he returned to Luke Air Force Base. He was the pilot. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Maryland Air National Guard. That was his rank at the time. He was the lead pilot on a flight of 2 F-15s, and as he flew to the south, the object was ahead of him, and to his left and to his right. It stretched from his 9 o'clock position on his left all the way across his canopy and windscreen to his 3 o'clock position on his right. And at that point, suddenly the radar in his aircraft went to white noise, just white hash on his instrument panel, and all the lights on the object dimmed like somebody turning down a rheostat. And at that point, he broke off the intercept with his wingman. They returned to Luke Air Force Base, which was just 15 or 20 miles to the west of where they were. So it didn't take them long to get home, and I'm sure they were very anxious to be back on the ground after that intercept. But it was a very dramatic sighting. I love talking about it because we have reason to believe, those of us in the UFO field have reason to believe that U.S. military forces were elevated from Defense Condition 5, skipping 4 altogether to Defense Condition 3.
Exactly.
And as a result of this incident. And the military was very, very badly shaken by this incident. I'm sure of it.
Absolutely. Well, and it goes back to like 1951 above the White House. The lights above the White House. I mean, like,
right.
we scrambled jets. That's the thing, is that, you know, we've publicly actually, scrambled jets to be a formidable, offense to these things or whatnot, and they're still, even though they scrambled these jets, there are military, they still deny the reports that it was anything.
Yeah. They're just lying to the American people. And the biggest question of all in ufology, and the one that concerns me and keeps me up late at night, is whether an alien force has succeeded in getting some kind of influence in our government, whether it be blackmail or who knows what it could be. But that is one thing that might explain why so many government leaders, so many presidents absolutely and categorically refuse to talk about this situation, because they could be being blackmailed. And that underscores the importance of the work that I do and that MUFON does, and everybody else who's a serious-minded investigator and worker in the UFO field.
Well, sure. You look at Obama, you look at Jimmy Carter, you look at all these guys. They've tried to bring it up. They've tried to bring it to the table, but they're so generic in their explanations that it makes you wonder if there's somebody above them that, they're just not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah. What they're doing is just foolish by my measure. They should call a press conference and say the UFO phenomenon is real. We've detected these UFOs for ages. I'm sure it goes back to the 1940s with the development of radar. For example, we all read in articles, newspaper articles, that the U.S. military, most of all the Navy, was able to track gloves and tools that astronauts dropped while they were working out in space. Well, if that's the case, are we to believe, and they track it with radar that is ground-based, if that's true, and I'm sure it is, we track all space junk that passes over the United States. If that's the case, are we to believe that they could not detect a 30 or 40-foot diameter disk, much less 120 or 150 or 200-foot diameter disk, or a craft that's 8 miles from wingtip to wingtip? Of course they must be tracking them. They must be detecting them every day, and they're lying to the American people.
STS-80. STS-80. I mean, for instance, it's not just ground-based, like you said. It's also satellite-based. I mean, they have so many ways to track all this stuff that's floating in our atmosphere. How do you deny that?
Yeah. Well, they've succeeded in doing it, and that's because the press lets them get away with it for free. And the press is just sort of a toothless lapdog for the government these days. In fact, the Seattle press, I'm roundly disappointed. On the morning after the Phoenix Lights, I called the UPI offices in Seattle. What I didn't know at the time is it was just a telephone link that went down to Los Angeles to the UPI offices there, United Press International. And I talked to a guy, and I'm going to share his name. His name was Joe Fossbender. And I said, Joe, are you aware of what happened over Phoenix last night? He said, no, Peter, what happened? And I'd given him material on UFOs before, so he knew who I was. And I said, well, we don't have the facts yet. In fact, it took us weeks or months to figure out what had happened. But something very dramatic. And I said, well, you'll have to call me another time because we have breaking news. The most recent polygraph tests for Mark Furman have just been released. This is after O.J. had already been acquitted.
Right.
So the polygraph tests, the latest, most recent polygraph tests for Mark Furman took precedence over the Phoenix Lights.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it's bizarre.
I think. Well, it's a matter of distraction. I think a lot of it.
I don't know. I think it's just denial. It's sloth, lethargy, incompetence, and denial. I've given one journalist in Seattle a whole bunch of UFO stuff as it's happening, and he's refused to cover it. And I say, Eric, what's the deal here? And he said, well, UFO reports are now passé, as if the news depends on what's de rigueur and what's chic and what's passé.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, if Miley Cyrus dropped a lollipop on an anthill, that's bigger news than an 8-mile-across craft being witnessed by thousands and thousands of people. In fact, right after that happened, as I recall, they threw a press conference, and Governor Simonson came and they had the guy come out in the alien suit, and they sort of just made a big laugh out of the whole thing. And because he was under a lot of pressure, because people were in a state of panic, as well they would normally be. I mean, you see anything like that huge in the sky, I would be panicking. I would be freaking out. So,
and that's the same governor, by the way, who 10 years later admitted to Leslie Keene, this is written in her book, admitted to her that he himself personally had seen one of those craft go right over his head. He was a former U.S. Air Force pilot. I don't know if a fighter pilot or what, but he must have realized instantly what he was looking at. And he lied to his constituents for a good 10 years.
Yep.
So it's going to be left to us, that is, UFO investigators and hosts on radio programs, to bring this evidence and bring this news to the American people. If we're being visited by intelligent creatures from other parts of our galaxy, or even other parts of our universe, I think that's a newsworthy item. And it's very important that we bring it to the attention of the American people.
Sure. Well, even if it's some kind of high-tech Chinese or Russian craft or even American craft. I mean, you wouldn't think they'd be test flying something 8 miles wide over a major city. I mean, that doesn't seem, if they had something like that. I think that the biggest building, at least as of a few years ago, at least in the U.S., is about a mile long, and it's actually a Boeing warehouse. And that's the biggest actual building, and that's 1/8 the size of something these people were seeing in the sky.
Yeah.
So
I was about to say, even if you can build a craft that's 8 miles from tip to tip, where do you put it? Where do you hide it?
Yeah, where did it go? Dark side of the moon or something? Or had to go somewhere.
Sue Watson, who's a very good witness, again, she was the woman who, with 4 children, saw this object hovering above her house at the base of Camelback Mountain. She said towards the end of their 5-minute sighting, it hovered above her home for 5 minutes. They couldn't see the sky. All they could see was the craft. And suddenly, when it was being intercepted by these 2 F-15s coming in from the north, it suddenly accelerated and jumped about 4 or 5 miles down above. Now it is hovering above Sky Harbor Airport. There were pilots at the time who refused to push back from their gates because they were looking up through windows at the craft as it hovered above Sky Harbor Airport. So it was a very dramatic event, and people still, most of all journalists, when they call here and they want this factoid or that factoid about UFOs, on average, how many reports do you get a day, Mr. Davenport? They know nothing. They haven't, more often than not, haven't even heard about the Phoenix Lights event.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's just crazy. Everybody should have heard about that.
Should have.
They had a very large craft and a pretty large mass sighting in Texas. I guess that was what, about 10 years ago?
No, it was the Stevensville,
Stevensville.
Texas sighting, and it occurred on a Tuesday night, January 8th of 2008. People who are listening, our audience, can go to our website and read some of the reports. It was very dramatic, principally because an object that was very, by all reports, was very large. It too, like the Phoenix Lights craft, blanketed Stephenville, Texas. And the reason it was so interesting is because it was very close to President George W. Bush's location at the time. He was at his ranch. And F-16s were dispatched, and people can read the reports on our website for that incident. Again, January 8th of 2008, Stephenville, Texas. It was a very dramatic event.
And that was cited as being over a mile wide, too. Isn't that right?
Well, it's hard to know. Unless you have a measuring stick and you have
Right.
a step ladder, how can you tell? You don't know how far away it is, so you don't know how large it is. You don't know how large it is, so you don't know how far away, and back and forth and back and forth. But it was so big that people standing on the streets of Stephenville, Texas, when it hovered above that city, held out their arms at a large angle, and it blocked out the sky above them. So
Amazing.
that's pretty large. And it flew to the west initially. It was seen by a number of people, not only in Stephenville, Texas, but from surrounding rural areas. One group, about 2 or 3 miles to the south of Stephenville, were tending a bonfire. And they were looking to the north. They saw the object hovering over Stephenville, and their impression was it was bigger than the city of Stephenville. But then it suddenly accelerated abruptly. It shot to the northwest, or the west generally, and they thought it was gone. 2 minutes later, or thereabouts, back it comes with 2 F-16s using their afterburners on its tail, and it suddenly accelerated and streaked away from the F-16s as if they were standing still.
Wow.
And an F-16 on an afterburner, you can read the reports on our website. They've been there for 8 years. When an F-16 or any jet aircraft is using its afterburner at low altitude, you know they have a mission in mind. And the reason I say that is because when you're using an afterburner, you're burning fuel at a ferocious rate. You don't have too many minutes in the air before you've got to start looking for a tanker or a runway.
Mm-hmm.
And so they must have been very dedicated towards scaring that thing off if they could from wherever the president was at his ranch at that time.
Well, those sure are some brave men and women of our military that would get up there and get anything anywhere close to that. I think I would be, I don't know. I don't know if I'd have the nerve to punch the gas to chase something like that around. I think I might be heading in the opposite direction.
Yeah, you're in a tough position if you're a fighter pilot and you get an order from the base commander to go shoot that alien craft down. Whoa, talk about being between the devil and the deep blue sea.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and there have been conferences dedicated to intercepts of UFOs by military fighter aircraft. And when I heard the estimate that was agreed to by virtually all of the speakers, I recall, as to how many just U.S. fighter pilots have lost their lives in the pursuit of UFOs, I said, no, that's impossible. But the number that they come up with is about 1,000.
Wow.
1,000 U.S. military fighter pilots have lost their lives or disappeared as a result of their attempt to intercept UFOs.
And that's just the U.S. I mean, like look at Mexico, for instance. I mean, there's so many reports down in Mexico. There are a lot of other countries who are very forthcoming as far as their investigation to this subject.
And Chile and others.
Sure. And, I don't know why those don't really make it to light. But I mean, there's definitely a lot of investigation going on, and a lot of governments are very forthcoming. And I don't know why the U.S. is just kind of keeping everything under wraps.
Yeah.
From listening to you on Coast and a variety of other sources, I've heard you over the last year mention on a couple occasions there's been kind of a trend or a proliferation of red orb sightings. That's something that's happening quite often. And is that still happening? Are you still seeing a lot of those?
It's the most compelling event that's taking place in ufology. It started in earnest about the third or fourth week of May 2012, and it has not let up ever since. And if people want to know what I'm talking about, just go to our website and scroll down to my postings over the last 4 years or thereabouts, and they can see photographs. One in particular up over Arlington, Washington, exit 206, the Smoky Point exit, just north of Marysville. A very dramatic sighting of about a dozen or more red or orange fireballs. We have no idea what these objects are. I've been doing everything but tearing my hair out and talking until I'm blue in the face to wake people up. And I'm not sure the American people want to be awakened. They're in a deep, deep Ichabod Crane-like slumber. They're mesmerized by their television screens. They no longer read. They no longer care what's going on around them. And I'm trying my level best at my own expense to point out to them that something of extraordinary nature is taking place, and I think they're still asleep.
Well, I think that the go-to explanation for that your, garden variety debunker is going to say is, oh, those are just Chinese lanterns. But these red orbs are not just floating in the wind. They're doing all sorts of erratic movements.
They're maneuvering.
And
correct.
And maneuvering in groups like they're in formation.
Right. And not only that, but they're going against the wind. How does a Chinese lantern move against the prevailing winds at altitude?
Exactly.
And how does a Chinese lantern, as you correctly suggest, Tony, suddenly accelerate and streak over the horizon?
Right. Yeah, it's just I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say we had 2 reports like that from Texas and from Arizona on Friday night. 2 nights ago, people estimated up to 40 in the cluster. Something of extraordinary nature is taking place, and the American people are not being apprised of it by their government. It's left to people like me.
Well, how many of these
if anybody thinks I'm a crackpot, I invite them to look at my resume. I've had positions of authority, really interesting jobs, and nobody's ever accused me of being a crackpot. And I'm getting some of the best UFO data, certainly second to none in the world today, and I say we're being visited.
I was going to ask you that. Aren't you, by nature, you're a biologist, right?
That's correct. A biologist and a translator and a businessman.
Right.
And used to try to make a living as a flight instructor, but that was a hopeless cause.
So how many of these things do you think are actually extraterrestrial versus maybe possibly government craft or something that we're just not aware of yet?
Let's lay the government conspiracy to rest. They're not government craft. The phenomenon goes back to the 1930s, goes back to the 1890s, it goes back to the 1860s, 1880s, And there are even some cave paintings that are 6,000 to 12,000 years old that are suggestive of sightings of disc-shaped objects apparently in the night sky, or in the sky anyway. I shouldn't say night sky. Everybody
or even
thinks
in the Bible. Yeah.
Or the Bible. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's a knee-jerk reaction. If I can't explain it, well, it must be the government that's doing it, because the government does strange things. But as you pointed out correctly during this program, would they be testing top-secret craft over your backyard? If they run out of oil, or if somebody disconnects the ignition switch, or something happens and it crashes in your backyard, there goes your backyard, but there goes the secrecy surrounding their program. They would test it over Area 51 or any of the large Air Force bases they have around the world. So these are not government craft. Everybody says, well, the SR-71 was mistaken for a UFO. No, it wasn't. It's just a very fast airplane with, excuse me, 2 wings and 3 landing gears, and it has a cockpit and a canopy. Any individual with an IQ over 60 would look at that for the first time and say, yeah, that's an airplane.
Right.
They wouldn't say, oh, it's an alien spaceship from the Pleiades. So
yeah, it is a very cool airplane, though.
Yeah, I love looking at the old videos of the SR-71. My golly, what a magnificent project that was.
Sure was. And I would say, though, that probably when, the B-1 or the B-2, and then the F-117, the stealth fighter and the stealth bomber, I could see those eliciting some reports. But
they're very loud.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that all got out in the open, too, everybody could see, although that's another very, very commonly cited object, especially in, say, the last decade, is very, very large triangular craft.
Yeah. In fact, it turns out, and a very nice book was written by a friend of mine. His name is David Marler. He's been on Coast to Coast. He's a meticulous researcher, very nice guy. And it was his observation, it was his opinion that most reports were not of saucers or discs, but rather of triangular craft, triangles. And lo and behold, he's correct. If you look at our data, most of the unexplained craft that are reported to the National UFO Reporting Center, about 2/3 of them are triangular. People call them boomerangs or things like that, but essentially triangular in body format. So it's sheerly by dint of fortune that, or maybe misfortune, that we call them flying saucers. What we should be calling them is flying triangles.
Well, like the Phoenix Lights, for instance.
Yeah, that was a wedge-shaped craft, and I believe the Stevensville craft was as well. Well, there's something out there. And, Wade and I, we both have a genuine interest in this. And again, Peter, thanks so much for spending some time with us tonight. It's just so wonderful to get to talk to you and get to talk about all this. Now, you've been collecting a tremendous amount of data for years and years now. And I imagine through that, there's got to be certain patterns that emerge, or certain, just from you having a 50,000-foot view of everything, is there anything in particular that you're seeing that's some kind of pattern or trend? We were just talking about, the red orbs and the triangles, but are there certain things that without seeing that much data wouldn't necessarily emerge, but it's like, oh wow, these things, is there a certain type of day or a certain like longitude or latitude that they favor? Or
I do have some impressions on that, and it appears to me that the sightings of these things we call UFOs are becoming more commonplace, and the objects are showing themselves more overtly than used to be the case even 5 years ago. Daylight sightings of clusters up to 50, or as I mentioned, for that Arizona Highway Patrol officer, and back on the 28th of September, 2013, 150 objects, orange objects. They were seen. There was a very dramatic sighting over the Super Bowl a year and a half ago in Phoenix. A lot of things are taking place that, to my eye, did not take place 10 years ago or 22 years ago when I first took over the UFO Reporting Center from its founder, Bob Gribble. It's just very shocking to me that these things can be taking place, and as you correctly point out, why aren't they being addressed in the press? It's bizarre. And there is one of the things I'd like to address just briefly in closing minutes here is the issue of hotspots. A lot of people think they're hotspots, like they're magnets that draw in UFOs. To the best of my knowledge, that's not the case. If you look at the data on our website, ufocenter.com, you'll quickly see that there are thousands, tens of thousands of cities where UFOs have been sighted, allegedly, and reported from. But there's one exception to that, and this is South Carolina, specifically the city of Myrtle Beach or North Myrtle Beach or Pawleys Island in South Carolina. It's the easternmost part of South Carolina. Why there have been so many reports of red, orange, yellow, amber, and gold lights and clusters of them in that area of the country, I have no idea. But I wrote an article for the MUFON Journal, the UFO Journal, published by MUFON every month, about this subject, and people can see the data with their own eyes by going to our website and just looking at the data for South Carolina. It's really an eye-opener.
Is that real recent?
It's been going on for 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
I've done many radio programs. I've written articles. I've talked about it. I've done everything I can to awaken people to it, but people are still not aware of that fact. But all they have to do is go to ufocenter.com, go to the report database, sort the cases by state, look at South Carolina, and they'll see what I'm talking about quickly. It doesn't take but a few seconds to get there.
So in closing, I mean, I've listening to you for decades now.
Yep.
You specifically just kind of document the cases. You don't really put a name to it or a reason to it or anything like that. You just kind of document them. Yep. And based on all that information, I've never thought of you as coming to the conclusion that they were extraterrestrial in nature or whatnot. But it seems tonight that, really is there really anywhere else to go with this as far as...
There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be something extraterrestrial in nature. And
absolutely.
And
I just... there was a sighting over Seattle, just west of the University of Washington recently, and good, high-quality videotape of the objects. I called or sent an email to an astronomer, a professor of astronomy, asking whether they might have had instrumentation that would have captured the presence of those objects, and he didn't even return my email.
Wow.
Right.
It's very bizarre. The impudence of academia makes me sick.
Well, I think the
Forgive
same
me
thing
for
goes
being
with,
so outspoken.
No, I think the same thing goes with meteorology, as far as like chemtrails and contrails and all that stuff. Like I have written, emailed meteorologists and stuff, trying to figure out like why you guys don't cover this overcast, this mist, that comes from these contrails, which should be a big part of their meteorological, program, or outcast or whatnot, and they don't reply. And
well, that same mechanism of ridicule is still in place and functioning very accurately, almost for anything that's inexplicable or unexplained. And that's just makes it easy for people in the powers that be to not have to deal with it. If everybody's going to be a laughingstock for bringing it up, then they just are like, oh, yeah, you're crazy too. But I will say this. I would venture to say that this, like you said, there's more and more sightings now than there have been, and they're coming in all the time. That has to partially be to do with the fact that more people are paying attention or looking for them, and also willing to report them. And I think the fact that Hillary Clinton, on numerous occasions now, has used saying that she's going to get to the bottom of the subject as actually a campaign issue, like a, that's something that we're all been told. Oh yeah, the government doesn't. They don't believe in any of that. It's all just a bunch of crap as far as they're concerned, and blah blah blah. But yet she's coming out and trying to use that as a vehicle to get more votes. And to me, that's kind of telling.
Bill Clinton said the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up this program, I'll just say that it is possible that the people in our government know fully well that something is going to happen in our future, and they are preparing us slowly but inexorably and psychologically for the event. Hillary Clinton has known about the UFO phenomenon, I'm sure, for decades. In fact, I have reason to believe, and I think I alluded to this in my message to you gentlemen earlier this afternoon, I have reason to believe that her husband was injured as the indirect result of the Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights occurred within seconds or minutes of President Clinton injuring the ligaments of his knee, allegedly, while he was spending the night down at the home of Greg Norman. The president, on the 13th of March, 97, had flown down to Florida to go golfing with Greg Norman. And he was spending the night at Greg Norman's home, and that's the night he injured his knee so badly, it is alleged, that he had to be spirited back to Washington, D.C. to have surgery performed to restore the ligaments. Three things happened that night. Three things happened. The Phoenix Lights event, the intercept, which included a Defense Condition 3 declaration, and the injury of the President of the United States. That's too much coincidence for me to accept as unrelated events.
Wow.
So I suspect, in fact, if people want to test my theory, go to the March 15th, 1997 front page of the New York Times, and you'll see the President of the United States lying in a hospital bed with his wife sitting beside him. Are we to believe that the president could have been injured when he was being raced to a waiting vehicle to get him to a secure location where he could oversee the defense of the United States or the globe? He is injured in the course of that taking place, and he would not share that with his wife? I find that hard to believe.
Right.
I think she knows fully well about the UFOs, and she's pandering for votes.
Well, he's been on late night talk shows and stuff, and has been asked about some of that stuff, and they joke around about it, beat around the bush, but yet everybody knows they've tried to look into that subject, and a lot of times they say, yeah, I've looked into it, and there's nothing to it. But then why would they look into it if they were, you know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't important, why would they not look into it?
Yeah.
Or Area 51. Jimmy Carter was also very famous for his UFO sightings and trying to divulge some of that information, and it just kind of just goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the presidents know fully well the U.S. Navy space surveillance system must have been picking up UFOs daily. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they would be reporting those to their senior commanders. And any senior commander who wants another star on his shoulder, if he doesn't tell the commander-in-chief about an intercept of a 150-foot diameter disc, probably could expect to be ushered out of his job very quickly.
Well, I think it's kind of a testimony, though. I don't think that the commander-in-chief or the president really get all the information that they desire. I think a lot of that stuff is kind of compartmentalized, and just it's the who's who gets to know that kind of information. So.
Yep.
Well, Peter, thank you so very, very much for joining us this evening. I've had a wonderful time, and Wade, I'm sure you have too, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, and
it's been enjoyable, gentlemen, and it's probably the most important scientific question that's ever confronted man. Are we alone? or are we not? And I think I've, over the last 22 years, collected data that strongly suggests, it may not prove anything, but it strongly suggests that we are not alone and that we are being visited routinely. And if there are anyone among our audience tonight who've had UFO sightings, my strong suggestion, my invitation to them is don't think about them, don't talk about them. Write them down and submit them as formal written statements using our online report form so the data is preserved and so it can be shared with the American public.
Indeed.
And again, if you don't feel comfortable about putting your name on it and you're worried about your reputation or your job, you can submit anonymously. However, I'm sure if you'd like to put your name and some contact information, and if you had a really interesting sighting, I'm sure Peter would probably like to follow up with you.
I would indeed. So, well, it's been fun, gentlemen, and I'm indebted to you for the invitation to appear on your program tonight. It's really it's high honor to get an invitation like this and to be called and said and to be told that people are actually interested in what I do. That's about the only thing that keeps me moving forward in this job.
Very much so, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything that you do, because I think it's a vital and very important job that you're doing. And I've spent many hours on your website reading testimonials and sightings, and can't thank you enough for everything you do, Peter. You're an awesome guy.
Thank you so much, and I'm really pleased to have an opportunity to share it for an hour or so with people who might be interested in that subject. So thanks to you, gentlemen, and I tip my hat in your direction.
Thank you so much, Peter.
All right,
have
Peter.
A good evening, gentlemen.
Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, geez, Wade, how cool is that?
Oh my God, I'm just like reeling right now.
I know. Man,
I could have gone on for hours.
Well, literally, like for hours and hours and hours. Hopefully, he had a nice enough time that maybe he'll come back and join us again sometime.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. So we'd just like to thank once again Peter Davenport. Again, everyone. He is the director of the National UFO Reporting Center. You can go to just simply ufocenter.com. And you not only, even if you don't have a report, there is a wealth of great UFO sightings and stories, encounters of all shapes and sizes, going back for years and years and years. Even if you're not a believer in the subject, or you think that it's just far-fetched and whatever else, I encourage you to go have a look at the data yourself. And then a lot of those reports come from highly qualified sources, as he mentioned earlier. An astronaut, policemen, airline pilots, air traffic controllers, U.S. fighter pilots, and of course, hostesses at Denny's, and random rock musicians like Wade and I. We both had a couple of pretty cool experiences. I need to sit down and write mine out and send it in to Peter too. I'm a little guilty of the lazy factor, and clearly I don't give a crap about the ridicule. You can all make fun of me for being into UFOs all you want, and you could be into Pokemon Go, and that's cool too. Even though now I've told you the government's spying on you. That's awesome.
One day it might be kind of a cool show to share some of our experiences that we've had.
Yeah,
I would love to, actually.
Well, you actually have shared a couple of your experiences, Wade.
Well, they were very renowned. I mean, like life-changing. I just can't even explain some of the things I've seen.
Yeah, you haven't really had a chance to go into full detail either. It's been kind of cursorily brought up. We need to get Peter Robbins back on the show, too. We unfortunately had a bunch of... It's really weird, though, dude. Check it out. This is the second time that we've had a UFO-related guest, and we've had inexplicable technical stuff go on that we never have had go on in any other show. Tonight we had weird stuff with it. And guess what, though? We frickin' overcame that shit. So if you're out there trying to fuck with us, you fail. God, I hope a bunch of black Suburbans don't show up in front of my house right now. 'Cause that would suck. So, yeah, just go ahead. Go actually mess with some criminals. Wade and I are just having some fun here, talking about something, a subject that we think is very, very important, that the American people and the people of the world at large should be at least aware of. You can make your own decision based on the information. If you think it's a load of crap, well, you're entitled to your opinion. If you think Wade and I are crazy, you're also entitled to your opinion, and you may be partially right because we're wild and crazy guys. But this is something I take seriously, and I know Wade does too. And so even if you don't, hope you had a good laugh at our expense. For those of you who found tonight's show fascinating and interesting, please let us know, and we will get more content along these lines out to you guys. But Peter Davenport is a very smart, very level-headed, and a guy who's been doing this. He doesn't make any money doing this. It's not like he's mad on the phone every day. It's not like he's got a government grant. It's, maybe some people send him some money here and there, but I've never heard him ask for money from anybody on any show. I've been listening to him for years, and he's not like, send me money, I'll tell you more UFO stuff. There's nothing like that. He's just a guy who's actually looking out for all of you, and that's pretty freaking awesome.
Yep. In fact, if you call the UFO Reporting Center, he answers the phone. He doesn't have a staff. I don't think he has. I mean, I just call him and it's like, hello, this is Peter. Like he just does this because he thinks that it's something worth, documenting.
Yeah.
And somebody's got to do it. And he was actually, Bob Gribble was the founder of the UFO Reporting Center, or the hotline. And he was getting ready to quit. And Peter thought, whoa, somebody's got to continue this legacy. Mm-hmm. And so he offered to help out. And in fact, Bob Gribble handed it over to him, and he's taken it over ever since. We didn't even get into Peter's sightings that go back to like 1954, his first sighting, which he's had several. But so I think part of it has to do with, his involvement in UFOs and the sightings he's seen. And then also with Bob Gribble and, him forming the UFO hotline. And it just kind of fell into place. And I'm grateful to have him. I don't think we all know about MUFON, the Mutual UFO Reporting Center, whatever. And that's kind of it's a network. It's a huge network, but it's not necessarily condensed like it is with Peter Davenport. He, has all this stuff condensed to one place, and all these documents and reports. Right,
and I don't think their database actually is completely available just to the general public like Peter's is either.
No.
I believe you have to be a MUFON member to get in access. They may have changed that recently, but I know for a fact that's how it was a number of years ago. And MUFON is a very big organization.
Sure.
But Peter's doing just about as much heavy lifting as an individual as those guys are as a state-by-state thing. Although I did recently talk to the Washington State director of MUFON, and he said that he had a soft spot for Washington-based radio shows, and so hopefully we can circle back around and get him. In the summertime they have so many UFO conventions. And a lot of these kind of heavy hitters like Peter and Peter Davenport and Peter Robbins, hey, that's interesting. We've had 2 UFO Peters on the show.
Yeah, and they're very busy. I mean, there's no lack of interest for this subject, for sure.
Yeah.
And there's many symposiums, conferences or whatnot all over the country and all over the world where these guys are very busy participating in. And so we're blessed to have Peter on tonight, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah,
wow.
Me too.
Cool.
And it was also pretty neat because as long as I've been listening to him, I don't know that I've ever heard him say explicitly that he thought it was extraterrestrials. Usually he's just reporting on the reports that come in. And by the way, he's on just about every Friday on Coast to Coast AM. If none of you guys have ever listened to Coast to Coast AM, you really should. Although I have to say their content's gotten a little more mainstream for my liking in recent years. But they still do have some really cool. I like just the mysteries of the universe in general. UFOs, Bigfoot, just inexplicable, weird stuff. For me, there's a number of because as you know, Wade, I constantly am listening about this kind of stuff and researching it and whatever. And there's a number of different possible explanations. Extraterrestrials, of course, is one, and they call that the ETH, or the extraterrestrial hypothesis. But there's also the possibility that there's some kind of interdimensional travelers. There's also the possibility that they're time travelers. And a lot of people are like, well, clearly time travel doesn't exist. Where are the time travelers? Well, you know, if I was time traveling, say, back to, I don't know, frickin', I don't know, the Revolutionary War, I'd be watching that shit from a distance because I don't want to get shot. And let's face it, we're a violent frickin' species down here. So I wouldn't be coming down here. And plus, there's the whole, all the thing of, gosh, what do they call that? The, like the butterfly effect and all the different problems that could arise with interacting with somebody from the past. So that's a possibility. Another one is that's kind of emerged in recent years is something that's called the breakaway civilization hypothesis. And Peter brought up some stuff about the 1890s. Well, in the 1890s, there was a whole wave of something that they had these airships. And they were like cigar-shaped craft, and they would even have like smoke coming out of them. And guys would land and get out, and they'd be just like normal dudes like you and me. And, sometimes wearing uniforms, sometimes not. But they'd get out and they'd talk to people and be like, oh, yeah, we're so-and-so. And, we built this ship. And so that's like way before, whatever it was, 1910 or 1904, I forget what year it was, the Wright brothers flew the supposed first plane. But going all the way back to the mid and late 1800s, there was stuff flying around that was apparently being piloted by just human beings. And if they were that far ahead of us technologically, who knows where they are.
I think a lot of that goes back, like we were saying earlier, to the Bible and also to Egyptian days where, I mean, some of these glyphs or whatnot really did show some unexplainable craft, like saucer looking or astronaut looking, entities or whatnot. Where, I mean, like, how do you really explain that stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
I would go back to Ezekiel in the Bible. When they talk about the wheel within the wheel.
Wheel within the wheel, right?
Yeah, and the four creatures that went wherever the wheel went and whatnot.
Right.
There's so much historical documentation to support some of this stuff that is mind-boggling.
It is, and it's just and just because of that ridicule factor that's been so seriously entrenched. I've even got guys in my own band that think it's all just a bunch of ridiculous horse shit, and Ryan, my singer, and I are all about it on board. But there's, I'm not going to mention any names, but there's at least one certain individual that pretty much poo-poos anything that's outside of the accepted paradigm, and that's fine.
There's nothing wrong with being skeptical. Is debunking, I don't know, but I mean, skeptical. There's healthy skepticism.
Well, I'm skeptical. If some dude came over to my house and said, "Oh, dude, I was standing there at 7-Eleven and I got abducted by aliens and they stole my wallet. Can I buy $5?" I'd be pretty fucking skeptical. You know what I'm saying? But like when there's a dude who is in charge of frickin' a base with nuclear missiles on it that's coming out and saying some stuff, you better damn well believe I'm gonna pay attention to what those guys have got to say. Come on. And it's funny, people are like, oh, well, that's just hearsay. Blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? Testimony. Let's talk about it for a second. If two people say that you killed Larry, you're probably going to go to jail or get frickin' the electric chair or whatever the hell kind of shit, because that's really all it takes is two corroborating witnesses and their word to just fucking ruin your life. Yep. So that's something to think about, and that's just Joe Blow fucking that works at 7-Eleven and the guy across the street at a gas station or whatever. So think about that. And with that, let's wrap this bad boy up. So
all right.
We'd like to thank you all for tuning in. We'd like to thank Mason Randles for gracing us with his presence and his awesome music tonight. Once again, that band is called The Sunshine Wall. Yep. Anybody listening from the Portland area, you can check the Sunshine Wall out Saturday, August 6th at Rock Hard PDX, along with Splintered Throne and a great band from the Bay Area called Discordia. That's going to be an awesome show. And again, a huge, gigantic, tremendous thank you to Peter Davenport for coming on. And what a great guy, and what a cool interview. This is going to be definitely go down as one of my favorite shows.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah. And so, Wade, I can't either. And, dude, big props to you. You're the man that made it happen. You called him up. I just still remember back like months ago when you said, I talked to Peter Davenport. He said he might be on our show. I was like, no way! Whoa! And we just did it. I actually almost fangirled out in the middle of the interview. I was like, Wade, we're talking to Peter Davenport right now. Oh, my God. I had to frickin' quell that. But anyways.
Well, he certainly is a great guy. And, I mean, he means everything he says. He's astute at what he does. And again, I was surprised that he even said that he thought we were being visited by aliens, because he's always been so just documentary,
right,
in his approach,
right.
And based on all his research, it doesn't surprise me that he came to that realization.
Hey, man, I'll tell you what, he has 1,000 times or 20,000 times the information you or I do, and I don't know if it's extraterrestrials or what it is, but I know damn well for sure by personal experience there is some weird shit flying around in our skies, and I'd like to know what the hell it is. In the meantime, I will continue enjoying hearing about it, thinking about it, and having late night conversations about it, online or offline, with my buddy Wade.
Indeed.
Yep.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Great show.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thanks, everybody. We love you. We'll see you soon. We'll be back next Sunday night with another turbid episode of The Wade Northwest. The Wave Northwest, right here on Digital Revolution Radio. See you next time.